easy. And nothing says summertime more than a low-maintenance meal that can feed everyone and then some. Yeah, it takes some time, but don't be scared off by that. Most of that time is spent just marinating, smoking, or baking. In this video, we'll show you how to prepare a whole pork shoulder, which will yield about 20 1/3 pound servings of pulled pork. We'll also show you how you can make pulled pork in your slow cooker or oven. But if you really want that authentic smoke flavor, smoking is the way to go. And if you're looking for a recommendation on a smoker to buy, check out the buying links in the description of this video. Now, we're going to use an electric smoker in this video. We chose to use an electric smoker because it can add a deeper smoke flavor compared to a wood-burning smoker or a gas smoker. The reason why this is because an electric smoker doesn't have to run as hot as the other kinds. As I'll mention later in the video, after the meat hits 140 degrees, it stops locking in the smoke flavor because of all kinds of chemical reactions that I won't explain here. So when you go to the store, you won't be looking for a label that says pulled pork. I mean, maybe that's obvious. I don't know, not for me. It would totally be the first thing that I would look for. But then again, I also put soy sauce on rice covered in cream of mushroom soup. Anyway, what you'll be looking for is a cut of meat that is a bone-in shoulder cut, commonly called Boston butt in the States. When you're shopping for your meat, be choosy about the cut that you buy. Keep in mind that the more fat that's on and in the meat, the juicier the final product will be. Some people get the wrong idea about what makes meat juicy. It's not water. Don't add water. Juicy meat has fat in it. You actually need residual fat content to make meat juicy. If you want delicious meat, don't be concerned with reducing the fat content. That just leaves you with a drier product. We like having a full layer of fat on top of the meat. So let's first gather your equipment and ingredients. You'll need a medium-sized bowl for mixing spices, a measuring cup and tablespoons, 3 large aluminum pans, rubber gloves, dark brown sugar, your spices, which include paprika, garlic, powdered onion, and oregano, coarse ground pepper and kosher salt, your pork shoulder. You'll need wood for smoking. We're using peach and pecan, yellow mustard, several medium-sized aluminum pans, tongs, plastic wrap, and paper towels, and of course your smoker. First off, you'll need to prepare your rub, which is another way of saying your mix of spices that you're going to spread on the outside of the meat. Now BG is adding 1½ cups of dark brown sugar, then ½ cup of MORTON'S kosher salt, then ½ cup of coarse ground pepper, next ¼ cup of paprika, then ¼ cup of granulated garlic powder. Then you're going to need your powdered onion. You have to shake it really good. Then you're going to add ¼ cup of powdered onion to your bowl. And then ¼ cup of oregano. And put on your gloves and mix that bad boy until it looks like all the spices have been evenly distributed. Nice work. Next, you're going to put the meat into an aluminum pan, like you see here. Then you're going to rub the entire piece with yellow mustard. Now there's no prescribed amount here to use, just use enough to cover the meat. You're going to do it on the top and the bottom, and make sure you also get all the sides. Next, you're going to take your rub from the bowl and you're going to spread it over top of the meat. Now there's only so much of this rub that will stick to the meat, so don't feel like you have to use the entire bowl here. Spread the rub over all parts of the meat, front, bottom, sides. Then pat it down and shake it off. Whatever remains sticking to the meat is enough for our purposes. Put your meat into a new, clean aluminum pan. Then cover it with plastic wrap and let it sit overnight if you have the time. If you do this overnight, the salt and the sugar will pull out some of the water to the surface of the meat, and this will help create a bark on the outside of the meat. So think of it like tree bark. This is that crunchy, flavorful part of the outside of the meat. After at least 8 hours of sitting in the fridge overnight, take it out of the fridge and pull off the plastic wrap. Now at this point, you have a few options for cooking, as I mentioned before. I'm going to continue on with the information here about how to smoke the meat. If you want to use a slow cooker or your oven, skip ahead to that bit of information. Now it's time for the smoker. Set the smoker for 180 degrees and put in a chunk of wood in the bottom of the smoker in the smoke box, like we're showing you here. Carefully place the meat onto the racks and then close the door. You'll want to check the meat in the smoker every 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how long it takes the chunk of wood to be used up. Now BG is also showing you that he puts water into the drip pan of the smoker. Now for some background, the smoker has a hole in the bottom of it where the fat and drippings can seep out. He puts water in the drip pan so that the spent pieces of wood can be removed from the smoke box and safely quenched. Now make sure to follow the recommendations of your smoker in this process. And as you saw him do just there, he added a new piece of wood. So at each of these checks, you're going to add a new piece of wood. So here we are at our third check. This is about 2 to 3 hours into the smoking process. Now remember what I said about 140 degrees? A little more on that here. Meat is permeable, meaning that it will absorb the smoke into the meat up to a point. And that point is 140 degrees. Above 140 degrees, meat has a harder time absorbing smoke. So our recommendation to maximize the smokiness of the meat is to smoke your meat for 6 hours at 180 degrees. As I mentioned before, we're using peach and pecan wood in this video, but apple and cherry are also great choices for smoked pulled pork. This is our third check at about 4 to 5 hours into smoking. You can see that the outside of the meat is starting to blacken and make that bark that I mentioned earlier. Now again, BG is taking some time to pull out the piece of wood that's all spent and put in a new piece of wood. At your final check, which will be at about 6 hours, you can see that both of these pork shoulders have a nice black bark on the outside, and they're ready to be removed from the smoker. You should probably get a good sturdy pair of tongs to help you get this meat out. You can use them just like he's showing you to help slide one of the racks out, and then get a good grip on it and pull it out and put it into a pan. Not going to be very pretty sometimes. As you can see, some still got stuck to the rack there, but you can pull that out as well. Now what we're going to show you is an important step that will help you keep the meat juicy while speeding up the cooking process. This method is called a Texas crutch. True thing. What you're going to do is cover your aluminum pan with 2 layers of foil and then seal the sides of the pan tightly like BG is going to show you here. Now you can also use a Dutch oven or a casserole dish, but since we're using aluminum pans, it just makes sense to go with foil. You can see that he's pretty serious about how tightly these sheets of foil are secured to the pan. You really don't want any moisture to escape, so don't be afraid to overdo this step. Now after you've done that, put your pan in a preheated oven to bake at 200 degrees for 12 hours. Okay, let's take a moment here to catch up those of you who aren't going to smoke the meat and instead are going to use a slow cooker or your oven. Let's start with the slow cooker. After you've prepared your meat by slathering it in mustard and rub, put the whole shoulder into a slow cooker and put it on low for 12 hours. If you still want the smoky flavor, you can buy liquid smoke and add that. Now this method will produce tender pulled pork, and the only thing it will lack is the color and crunch of the outside bark. If you want that color and crunch and don't have a smoker, use your oven. Put the meat on a roasting rack in the oven at 425 degrees for 45 minutes. Then take it out and turn your oven down to 200 degrees. Then make your Texas crutch, just like we showed you. Then put it back in the oven and bake at 200 degrees for 12 hours. And here's one more tip. Regardless of whether or not you smoke the meat, when you're baking this pork in the oven, put the pan on top of a baking sheet, particularly one that has sides on it, like a jelly roll pan. If there's any spillage from the dish, it will end up on the baking sheet and not on your oven. All right, after 12 hours of baking, it's time. Pull your meat out of the oven and let it rest until it's cool enough for you to pick up with your hands. Seriously, wait until it's cool enough. Gloves are really helpful here. What you're gonna do is reach down and pick up a big hunk of meat, and you're gonna feel for cartilage or sinewy tissue that needs to be removed. Anything that you wouldn't wanna eat, take out. Some of these pieces are gonna fall apart into smaller chunks easily. Some will need to be chopped into smaller pieces like this one here. So he's gonna take the knife and just cut them apart into smaller pieces just like that. Here's another example of a piece that needs to be cut down that started out as a larger piece. Difference between good pulled pork and great pulled pork happens here. Great pulled pork only has the best parts, so don't rush this part. Here's an example of a piece that had some cartilage or tissue that needed to be removed. He just pulled it off and put it to the side. After you've gone through all that meat, the gloves come off, but you're not done with that pan. We're gonna use that juice. Of course we're gonna do that. Get a strainer, pour the juice through the strainer back on top of the shredded meat. Then put on a new pair of gloves and mix all this together. Also, salt and pepper as needed. Thanks for watching today. Sorry it has been so long. Our baby became a toddler and yeah, well. We're also working on creating an online course for sausage making where you can learn not only the basics of sausage making, but also over a dozen different flavors, including things like maple, Italian, and Polish sausage, as well as hipster flavors like tandoori, laconico, and bulgogi. Subscribe to us and like our Facebook page to get notifications on when this class is available. And as always, thank you for joining us on our final freezer.